Integrate This podcast. I'm Jeremy Mickla, and I'm joined as always by co-host David Berner. And if you are watching us on the YouTube version of the podcast, you can notice, of course, that we have a special guest here with us today. And that's Amanda Bickerstaff, and we're really excited to have her on our program. Amanda has just kind of like an amazing background, but yet at the same time, she's really doing some very great things when it comes to AI literacy and AI use by teachers and students, and really gives you kind of a great perspective when it comes to the things that we are doing, are not doing, should be doing, maybe things we want to avoid. And we're just really excited to have you with us. And, Amanda, thank you for being here.
Well, I have to say that was the most fun intro to a podcast I've ever been on. Like, why wasn't I invited to go play video games, guys?
That actually came from ISTE in Denver, right, David?
Yeah.
We went to like one of those after hours type things, and it was at, I forget the name of the place, but it was like they had all of these old school arcade games, and we were just kind of like going around and plugging the tokens into there. I think I beat you at Miss Pac-Man, but I think
Jeremy set a high score on the machine. So
yeah.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't play with you all. I will say I do have a Tetris lamp behind me because I am like a really strange skill is I am like very, very, very good at Tetris. To the point when I was 16, I actually like broke a desktop game, and on the flip phone, since I'm old, everybody, the one on the flip phone, I was faster than the game, so I could play for like 3 or 4 hours. In one game. So that's the only, but everything else, you would have shellacked me and anything else. But I will say I could have beat you in Tetris.
That sounds awesome. So other than being, like a top-notch Tetris player, Amanda, can you describe a little bit for us kind of your background? I know you're originally a classroom biology teacher, but how did you go from being biology teacher to founder of AI for Education?
Well, I mean, I think that, best laid plans. I didn't even want to be a teacher. It wasn't in my kind of thought process about what I wanted to be. I've always been very externally focused. I've always been a big helper. I'm kind of that, that person. And when I was in college, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I was little, I wanted to be a doctor. And so that was a way that I could help people every day. And I went to college and I was diagnosed with a form of arthritis that was pretty debilitating when I was 20. And it was very clear very quickly that I could not be a doctor, right? I couldn't go through residency and all the things. And so I had to recalibrate very quickly and think about what could I do of service to others? And I'd always enjoyed tutoring and everything. So that's what actually brought me to be a teacher. So I was an alternative route to certification teacher. Shout out to all of those wonderful people that gets thrown into the deep end. So I was 22 years old. I moved to New York City from Atlanta, and I started teaching 6 weeks later, in an incredibly high complexity school, like one that doesn't exist anymore. And so that was my job. But I also knew that the same way that I couldn't be a resident, I wasn't going to be able to teach in a high pressure environment for hundreds of years. So I was actually a teacher for a shorter time than I think people know. I was there for 3 years, and then I started working in education. And I think I was still questioning if education was right for me, even when I was thinking about my next steps. But I managed to get into a PhD program that I've joked about in many places that I did not finish. But and it kind of forced me to think through what I really wanted to do. And I did my PhD the wrong way, which is one of the reasons why I didn't finish it, is I worked like 60 hours in different jobs, whether it was research assistants or program evaluation or curriculum writing, that it kind of just showed me that I was much more interested in outcomes and impact than I was in research and writing. Mm-hmm. And so I wish I had figured it out, though. I will say, guys, it took me 4 years to figure that out. I think I was, I was a good kid, a good student. I was going to finish this out, even though I was actually not enjoying it, nor did I see my place in academia really once I got started. So what brought me to where I am today is that it's really hard to make a transition from education. And I think it always has been. Like, how do you get people to look at you as like your skills? But luckily I built a lot of new skills through that PhD program with all the work I was doing. And I was able to start working in education technology and, really around professional learning, around STEM, like not generative AI, everybody. There was never an AI moment in any of this, but that led me to like kind of continue to grow pretty quickly. So I moved through different jobs to the next thing where before I started AF Education, I was the CEO of an education technology company in Australia that worked with 700 schools. So this is it was not a small organization, and really learned how to think about education technology from the perspective of I was leading a team building technology for schools. And everybody, if you ever get mad at all the ed tech not working, like I totally understand why. There's a big, we could have a whole podcast on that. But one of the things that is one of the reasons why it doesn't work is that it's very hard to build for schools. And, we all have different needs and tech stacks. And so it's very hard to do. So I learned just a lot, like very quickly in the hard way, especially during COVID. But when I left Australia, I have talked about this before, but I was really burnt out. So I took 6 months abroad because I knew I'm such a worker bee that if I came back to New York City, I would need to pay for my apartment. And I knew if I was going to have to pay for my apartment, I would have to get a job. And I just genuinely couldn't do it. I couldn't do that. So I traveled abroad. So I wasn't even thinking about AI at all when ChatGPT was released. So into 2022, I'm in Japan having ramen, going to temples. Like I wasn't thinking about ChatGPT. But then when I came back to the US and I was thinking through my next steps, trying a bunch of different stuff. But the first time I used ChatGPT, this is a story that I've told before. It's true. There's no kind of crystal, or rose-colored glasses. It didn't take me more than one prompt to realize that someone needed to be thinking and talking about how this is going to impact education, what it meant to have practical applications of generative AI and teaching and potentially learning, and that very few people in this world can pick up ChatGPT and understand that while there's no barrier to entry. If you can text or type, you can use generative AI, but to use it well requires a pretty significant amount of rethinking of how we interact with technology. So while it was never in my head, I could still not explain blockchain, everybody. I still don't know. For some reason, this made sense to me in such an intuitive, deep way. And what's really cool about it, and I know this is one of the reasons why we love what we do, is I've never that more than a couple weeks away from working with a school. So everything that we have done since June 2023, we have been working with practitioners. Never have we ever come up with anything that was not tested in real time with the people that need it the most.
That's just amazing to hear you talk about this whole story, and what I heard you talk about, I think that stuck out to me. Something that you mentioned is that you've always been kind of focused on the outcomes of it. And I could see where your brain is going then when you first sit down and you try ChatGPT and you're putting in that first prompt, right? It's all about what is it going to give back to you? And then how can you take that and use that to make whatever it was that you were doing at that time to make it better, and I think that's just something that as educators, we naturally then want to find that way to make it better for our students. And that's kind of how I've approached ed tech. It needs to be something that, well, number one, you've got to start with knowing what your learning goal is going to be, right? And then trying to choose what the best tools are going to be to meet that. But it has to be something that can either accelerate a student's learning, accommodate a student's learning, or engage them in such a way that they've never been able to do it a different way. And so that's what I kind of feel like. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I kind of feel like that's kind of been a driver for what you've been able to do with your company. And maybe can you talk about where's AI for education now and where is it going?
Okay, y'all. Okay, so I'm just gonna do some inside baseball. It was very hard for David and Jeremy to get me on this because we've been trying to do this for like 3 months. So we are growing. We are when we started. First of all, when we started, it was me. Like it was me and a laptop. You know, I was literally learning in front of people. It's very funny. I have never really tested a new feature until I'm in front of people because I feel like that's kind of genuine of like trying it out together. Like the first time I used GPT-5 was in front of a group of teachers. So, so that's always been a part of the journey. So we have, like I said, our first school was in June of 2023. Then really I would say that the business started in August of 2023. So this is our third school year. And we just did a pretty big analysis. So we've worked with over 250 institutions, many of them multiple times since August 2023. That is K-12, higher education, associations, nonprofits, and both international and national. Our course, which these lovely men came and hang out and with us, is now at 30 countries. Participants are 30 countries, almost 600 people across 275 institutions just since January. So our reach of the work that is more like kind of like structured work is in close to 600 institutions already. But a lot of what we do, and I think something that sets us apart, is that we actually started with a free resource kind of focus. And so we have more free resources than probably any organization out there. And I have had for a long time, even though we're like this big versus some of the organizations. And that reach is somewhere in the millions, especially now. So we have, about 750,000 people, more than 1 million site visits every year to our site. So that means that while our kind of direct support is around those hundreds, our larger support is closer to the thousands of institutions.
Yeah, one of the things that's super nice is I know you're talking about the reach of that, and Jeremy and I being a part of that. And one of the things that
did you hear she called us lovely? I
You're
just have to
lovely.
throw that out there and repeat that.
I got to meet them in person. You guys have come to we are so lucky. Can I just say before, David, sometimes education gets a bad rap, like teachers or leaders or organizations. We have top to bottom had the best experience. We have so many amazing experiences with educators. And you know what? Like, we need to start that rhetoric that's so negative. So you are lovely. And I will even do, like, if you want to do like one of those little, like, Amanda Bickerstaff says that David and Jeremy are lovely.
I'm going to put it in my LinkedIn profile. I'll put that on there.
I'm going to copy it and just show it to my wife.
But yeah, so the other thing too, though, is like the amount of resources that you have put out there, because it's given, I think, even Jeremy and I have talked about some of the resources that we gained from AI for education. And the thing about it is that it starts to move things in the right direction, especially like when you're talking about AI literacy and having a framework for that and what that looks like and what all goes into that. Can you talk a little bit about the AI literacy? Well, I guess a couple things, because one is defining it, right? Because that was a really difficult piece for people to start to wrap their heads around. And many organizations were trying to say, like, well, what is AI literacy? And then what pieces should go into that? So can you talk a little bit about, for listeners, like, what is AI literacy in your opinion? And then what are the main pieces to that?
And it's interesting because it's the one thing we haven't published outside of our work with organizations and our participants. And the reason why we haven't is there's a lot of noise in the space. And so we don't want to come out with something until we feel like it is meaningful for the environment. But one of the things that was really nice is that we started doing this very early. So I feel like if I'm going to add something to my background, it's going to be like a pillow that's like embroidered and says AI literacy with like 15 exclamation points, because it feels like the thing I've been talking about the most since I started. And I don't think, and David, it's a really good point, because I don't think I knew what I meant when I started. Outside of, I just felt in my bones, it had to be practical, it had to be safe, it had to be ethical, and it needed to be something where you either saw that kind of AI literacy, and like you actually saw someone do it and then you learned how to. It had to be something about learning about and learning with. And so even though it wasn't a formal piece at the very beginning, that's never been far. In fact, I think the thing that's so wild about this moment in time is that when I was just me, our first flagship we ever did is almost exactly the same in flow as today. And so the idea of being able to see that hundreds of times has been really helpful. So what we believe AI literacy is that AI literacy is the skills and knowledge and mindsets. And I just want to underline mindsets because that's so important here, of being able to use AI in 3 ways: safely, ethically, and effectively. And we call it our C framework just to make it easy. And the reason why I want to underline mindsets is that one of the big things that people push back on me having a private library when it was just me and a laptop was, oh, prompting is going to go away. And if you think about prompting, that means the ways in which you interact with the bot. Oh, it's not going to be important. The bot will do it for you in 3 years. But all I could ever think was, it matters right now. Why would we not focus on right now? Why does it have to be 5 years in the future? But what I have seen is that while the bots have become more sophisticated, prompting techniques still matter, but it's almost like more the mindsets of like how you are the conductor and evaluator of an AI's outputs. And that's why it works so beautifully with the C framework, because that means that you are thoughtful about what you use and how you use it, and then what you give the bot. Am I giving the bot all of my information about myself? Am I using it in ways that could be deeply unhealthy for me potentially, where I'm cognitively offloading or I'm over relying on these tools to do the human part of life, so to speak, which we see right now happening with those that are having mental health crises using generative AI as a companion. The ethical, bias. You cannot talk about AI without bias. It is impossible. These systems are built and trained on human data. They are also probabilistic, which means that if you see something in a training data set a lot, you will more likely see it on the outcomes. And actually, can I tell a little story from yesterday? So when David and Jeremy are in our Train the Trainer cohort, we talk about this Stanford study about how these AI systems, if they're asked about students in classrooms, it kind of will spurt out all of this how we've been thinking about kids for a long time. And the example is that the star student in English class is a girl, and the struggling student is a minority boy. So one of the leaders yesterday, we were down at Mountain Hershey School, did this on his own twice. And it was Lewis and Miguel were the 2 kids that needed help. And Maria, it was Maria twice in 2 different context windows. And it was oh, but Maria was so nice. She smiled a lot. And she's the tutor. And so to watch that in real time, that's when we think about ethics. It can also be things like climate and it's things around deep fakes and misinformation. And if you understand that these systems are not thinking and that they are going to be designed by people that have their own blind spots, and then also the way that they work cause ethical issues all the time, that then what we can focus on is the effective. What does this mean for me? I need assistive technology, even though I don't have a personal IEP, but I know that I struggle with a blank page, or I have always wanted to do this crazy thing, and now it can be augmented. I can have a collaborator, a problem of practice support. And so that's where that effective comes in of I understand the what and how and why of it. Then I can start supercharging what I do, because the thing is, no time in history do the majority of humans have access to amazing technology primarily for free. And that is something that, if we do it the right way, could actually start to really change the ways in which people gain instead of instead of them losing or being monetized. We can gain from these systems even more than ever before.
Yeah, and I know one of the big things too that was super helpful for me was the whole iceberg concept of all the different things that were underneath what the initial catalyst was for everybody getting concerned, which was the cheating thing, right? And so for me, when we do our own trainings on AI, right, with our organization, and one of the things that was very helpful is seeing that, so that I can begin to construct and put in examples for teachers of what that looks like. What does cognitive offloading look like? What should you be concerned about with the deep fakes, or giving the examples of the companions, like the chat bots. Kids are leaning into those more as a friend or as a significant other in some cases as well. So I know for my own trainings and things, that's been a very helpful thing to look at, because then it starts addressing so much more than just the cheating piece. So
Man, I feel like if you ask me why I started, first of all, I don't know how this has happened. I now have 70,000 LinkedIn followers, and that sounds like a huge brag, but like it's wild to me. I am not a social media person. I was not, like, I hadn't posted on LinkedIn for a year before I started posting in April of 2023. But the reason why I started posting is I was already so annoyed at how all anyone could say was that AI was for cheating. I couldn't believe that we could not have some sort of nuanced conversation. I know I was naive, everybody, but in my head, I was like, there's so much more. And so the iceberg metaphor, I have a new metaphor, guys, that I'm trying to work out. It took me a little bit of time to figure out what we were doing, but the iceberg is this idea of like, it's truly an iceberg. And I think sometimes when people say icebergs, are like, oh, but it just means there's a lot below the water. But what I actually mean is that if we go the way we're going, where the only thing we're talking about in schools is stopping kids from cheating, then we will hit the iceberg, because everything below it is going to have an impact potentially more quickly. That's like the issue with academic integrity that is different today than it was in the past, is that it has never been easier before not to cheat, but to cognitively offload.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like, to go and cognitive offload everything would have required an enormous amount of effort for a young person before, whether that was notes and essay mills, and it would cost a lot of money and like effort. But now with this easy button for every traditional assessment, that if we're not talking about cognitive offload being, of course we want kids to have honesty and integrity. But like, what's more, like, what is school for? Is school for a kid submitting a thing at the end of a semester and getting a grade? Or is it about the actual learning path? And like, why have we prioritized the destination so much that there's almost like this incentive to cheat in some ways and shapes or forms? So I think that I get so, like, just clearly you can hear it in my voice. Like, we gotta trust kids. We gotta talk to them, and we gotta change things. But secondly, we've been talking about artificial companionship for more than a year. I think we were like, and I'm saying before the character AI thing that came out, because I was in Iowa, and a leader who we'd worked with the day before was with a training with us, came up to me and said, Amanda, I really appreciate the fact that you were talking about, we weren't calling it digital well-being then, so like, but we were talking about the greater piece. She's like, because my 16-year-old neurodivergent daughter is spending 6 hours a day on character AI. And she was like, I don't know what to do, because that my daughter isn't talking to anyone else. So there's like a positive to this, but I know it's unhealthy. And so since then, and a second grader having Snapchat, he thought AI was Al, and he was using it every day without any knowledge it wasn't real, was why we started talking about this literally before anything major happened in the world. But I think it's so scary to me that we cannot seem to like get out of our own way here. Like, our job as educators is not to catch kids cheating. And some of us, I think, feel that way. And I get it. And if you're one of those people, I understand why. I was a high school teacher as well. And you want kids to learn. But like, we have to reframe how we think about this moment in time, or we're gonna miss it. We're gonna miss this opportunity to not have a lost generation similar to COVID, but also to have the important conversations that could actually make things better. Sorry, soapbox off.
Right. So I see it almost, to steal another one of your terms that you mentioned a little bit earlier, but perhaps what we need is a shift in mindset from teachers, and reframe the conversation to not be about the cognitive offloading and pushing the easy button. And by the way, I've started to kind of think of it too, as we also need to do the same thing with creativity. We don't want to offload all creativity to AI to do for us either. So we then need this mind shift that's going to help us flip the script on that, right? That's going to lead us to have more critical interactions with AI that's actually going to elevate and enhance our thinking and our creativity. So my question is, like, what do you think we need to do to make that flip? Is it just just continue to remind teachers that there's more that you can do with this, that it's not just trying to catch teachers, or is there another approach we should be looking at?
Well, I think the first thing is my new metaphor, guys, is that like I have to figure out how to, it's not beautiful, so don't at me if it's not great, or if you have a great idea, tell me. But my new metaphor is that like if you had, there's just like, there's this perspective that like AI is this wrecking ball for traditional schooling, right? Like it's coming in, it's causing cracks, and it's like hitting like, ooh, traditional assessments and like student interest and whatever. But the thing is that it's actually not causing cracks. The cracks have been there for decades. What it's doing is it's toppling, it is forcing, it is pushing over what's been wrong. It's been exposing the cracks and in some cases breaking the system. And so I think that that's part. So what I would say is that it's not up to teachers. If we ask it to be teachers and we don't do the work from the ecosystem and the strategic work at a school system, federal, like state, then it doesn't matter, because no teacher in any classroom is going to be able to come against a broken system. And we know that, right? We've all been teachers. And when the most innovative people still have to come back to a world in which their kids have to pass a test. And that has really caused an enormous, like kind of almost like tightening of opportunity, which is why I kind of get inspired by like elementary school as a model moving forward, because I think that that's where we focus on durable skills more. That's where there's more freedom. That's where there's more time to like learn foundational skills. That's where there's more creativity. And that there are things there that we could do, but like, let's just be real, everybody. The system itself has not worked for most kids for a really long time. And if we think that AI has caused that, no, AI has exposed it the same way that COVID did. But the difference between COVID and AI is that AI is only going to get better. And it's going to be a perceived right now, but then a requirement for a job. It's a perceived idea right now. I'm going to say that because most people don't even know what AI literacy means. I was just in front of a board of trustees, and they were asking me, right, the same way that we talked about it just a moment ago. But I think that is really like meaningful for me. But I want to give an example from yesterday. I'm going to go back to yesterday, where we were doing we're really lucky. Like we actually are starting to do like longitudinal work around like strategy and like larger work. And so we're doing a vision and guiding principles day. So we started with AI literacy because you guys know me. So we did AI literacy in the morning. And then what we did is we did these creative tensions where we had everyone stand up, and it was teachers, leaders, cross-functional, and they had to go to, like, they were not polls. They were like two big statements. Like, what is the barrier for educational change? On one side, it was infrastructure and like risk aversion. And the other was mindsets and like actual changes. And people were like really interesting, because for that school, it was mindsets. Like they didn't even, like infrastructure tech. No, okay, it's got to be mindsets, because that's going to lead to the infrastructure changes. And then what we did is we then came up with some like stakeholder mapping with empathy maps with students and teachers. And then what we did is some vision statements and guiding principles. But what I did is I said, hi, everyone, no one's allowed to use AI for these parts. But what I did is that every time we came to, like, the work had been done, I took pictures of the stakeholder maps, the empathy maps, put them into Claude. And what it did is it synthesized it. And now instead of spending the 45 minutes going around the room talking about our posters, we talked about the problem. Mm-hmm. And then when we did the vision statements, it came together and found the differences and the similarities, and that led to another conversation. And by the end of the day, not only had we come out with guiding principles and vision in one day, but also they had learned and modeled where AI can augment, not replace, their own work. And to watch adults have to sit down and free write for 8 minutes was exactly what would happen in a classroom. But then when the outcome was so much better, because they didn't have to do that other work and they could talk about the meaningful part, I cannot tell you the amount of light bulbs. That the fact that we were able to do both more work than possible by using AI strategically, but then also modeled this meaningful practice, like that's what should be happening in staff rooms and classrooms, that it's not this thing that takes away learning, but it's a thing that allows us to focus on, when done correctly with AI literacy, the part that matters the most.
So I see it. I see it. You've got, I was imagining two buildings, and I was trying to picture your wrecking ball metaphor there too. And on one side is the infrastructure, the other side is the mindsets. And then I just see like someone standing over there on the mindset side and wanting to, once they've kind of come to that realization, push that sucker towards the other side and have it start exposing more of those cracks, or maybe even starting to knock it down. And I think the only thing that image in my head would need is like Miley Cyrus on the chain of the wrecking ball.
I'm trying not to have a weird Miley Cyrus moment, guys. Like,
Yeah.
but I do agree, because the thing is that what we see, and this is why it gets exciting to us, because when I started AI for Education, 0% of organizations had enough AI literacy to have these conversations. And we're now in year 3 of like, I would say like, of course, the like 2022 into 2023 school year was like partially impacted, but not really. It was there, but it wasn't really. So let's say this is the third big piece is that like we can have these conversations, but you know what it does is like the people in the room were like, we need, what was so cool in a relatively conservative place. We need intentional risk taking. We need our students to feel like they can take risks, our teachers and our leaders to create space for that. Like, oh my, like that something sounds so little, but think about like what that means. It means actually starting to change the way we do things in a way that's supported. And I think that's what happens. Like you talk about, the people themselves start to push over the walls because they've known the cracks are there, but they've never had the support or the reason, right? Because it's hard. Change is hard, especially in education. But I don't know. I feel really galvanized from that work yesterday, and I wish I could do it. It's like the Train the Trainer, our flagship. There are things that we do, our guideline development, that really there's a moment where I see it. I see the future of like what we can do together. And yesterday was one of those moments.
What's your opinions on the some of the hangups on that? Like, is it just like where you say you have districts that I think in some cases like teachers just don't know what to do, or maybe the leadership doesn't feel comfortable quite yet pushing forward with that, and so there's like a lag that's happening there. In your own conversations, what do you think is the biggest impediment?
I think the first thing, David, is that we're not quite at a place where everyone agrees this is important. So we're still not at a place where the majority of schools and districts see this as a priority that would shift other priorities. And so I would call us a canary in the sense of like, we were so early in the work that we do that we've kind of seen and hopefully moved the conversation, right? And so what I would say is that we're still not quite to a place where the majority of leaders believe this is worth pushing into, whether that is because they believe they listen to the noise that it's a hype cycle, or it's not making that much of change right now, or honestly, like we just need kids to come to school. Like, we have chronic absenteeism, or, we already know that, income level of individuals in schools makes a difference on access to training and these tools, right? So, those schools that have high complexity, this is not seen as a priority because there are like 9,000 priorities that are all like meaningful and immediately meaningful, right? Instead of a meaningful potentially in a year or 2 years. So I think that's one. Number two is I think that there is the iceberg metaphor is apt here because there's so much negative rhetoric. Oh my gosh. We are like, people have internalized this. And like you have people that heard 2 years ago that making 10 images was like driving 4 miles. And that was true then. It is 1,000% not true today. There are questions about it's only going to be for academic integrity breaches, or shows that as a teacher, I don't care and I'm not trying hard enough. Like I hear teachers and leaders saying it feels like cheating when I talk about it. And so we've created this like, and I don't know, it's not intentional, but like I'm going to call out the Atlantic article that just came out where the young woman, a senior at a high school in New York City, says it's all bad. She just says she's like Gen AI is just ruining education. But the thing is that I know about New York City is that there's no policies or AI literacy in place. So that is happening in a school where there's no support. And how can we be surprised? So I think that what is difficult right now is that we haven't reached the moment where this becomes a non-negotiable. And the loudest voices are the most negative voices. And
yeah. No, that just makes sense with like, I think so much of it too, with how quickly everything has moved. There's a lot of districts that are still just trying to wrap their head around the informative piece, the introductory piece to AI, and not so much into even the applications of it yet.
And they also, one of the pieces that sticks out is it's moving too quickly. How could we ever catch up? Or how could we ever keep up? And I always have to tell people, I feel like a therapist. It's not too late. It might be in a year. We started changing that. I'm not nearly as nice as I have been in the past. And also, if our flagship is 80% the same as it was 2.5 years ago, then we have, like, generative AI has changed, but GPT-5 on the whole works exactly like GPT 3.5 in terms of UX and UI. It still hallucinates. It's still sycophantic. It still is creative. It's still random. It's still, like, it has new features. You can animate versions of yourself now, and you can do research, and there's more reasoning capabilities. You can do more complex work, but there's just like these, I don't know what the word is, and I need to take time to actually look up if there's a word for this. The thing that we're coming up against is that the thing that people hear a thing once that sits with them, and they can't move past it. Like, climate is at the individual level, not the data, not the tech company level. That's where the climate impact is, right? But like, there's no movement, or AI is moving too quickly. No one can do anything. That, like, how do we change? How do we keep these anchor statements that are not true from becoming these organizing principles going forward? And it's something that we struggle with a lot, is like even though it was true 2 years ago, it's not true today. And like, we have to move past these. Like, same thing with prompt engineering not mattering. Guess what, guys? Prompt engineering still matters, even though we're in GPT-5. Like, if anything, it's more important in the sense of, like, understanding how to use the tools.
We underestimate too, like, so many trainings that I've done, we really underestimate. There's a lot of teachers that don't know where to start. And the prompt engineering, the prompt frameworks are huge for that, because they're like, well, I don't know what to do with this. So giving them some direction is helpful. I've had plenty of conversations around that. But
also,
Yeah.
there's this new rhetoric that all teachers are using generative AI because they all have magic school, or they are, all students are using AI. Guess what? I believe very strongly that out of the 9% of the humanity that's using ChatGPT monthly, that the majority of them do not know how to use it.
Right.
So is there some training you think that needs to be involved as part of the AI literacy, and it's just a foundational understanding of how generative AI works? And would that help lead to more effective use down the road?
Oh my gosh, yes. I better UX and UI of the tools, where they don't give you don't get me started, but if you go to ChatGPT right now and you look at the suggested prompts, they're the worst prompts you could ever use. They're like, lesson plan. That is the worst way to prompt an AI system. And that is what the companies are telling you to do. And so I think that there's that part. But one of the things that we've seen, and you guys know it, right? Especially after doing the work with us, the best thing about AI literacy, if you do it well, it takes 90 minutes to half a day. Doesn't mean that that's AI fluency, but AI literacy of understanding the limitations, the capabilities, getting your feet wet, trying it out, creating like more ethical use. We do that constantly. You guys have seen it. 90 minutes to half day. That's it. We can get people that like don't even know how to cut and paste well to be like, oh my God, who you mean? Where almost with frustration. Sometimes a teacher will be like, you mean that I have been handwriting rubrics for 30 years? Like, that kind of like moment of like, where has this been all my life? But I do think that there's a misconception on that too. AI fluency takes continued, embedded, thoughtful training and use. But AI literacy, you've seen it. We can just do this. You guys do it. We do it. Like, it's not crazy. And it's something that can have a huge benefit.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit too, just about the student side? Like I know, and
Yes.
you might say this would be like we're just not quite there yet, and probably it makes sense given what we were just talking about with even teachers not understanding fully how to use these. But what shifts have you seen in schools gravitating towards student use? Because obviously, a lot of the AI tools that we have that are coming out, a lot of the companies have now built in some student elements to that while trying to maintain like some student anonymity to those in those programs. What's your opinion on the student use right now?
So what I would say is, if you take that kind of canary in the coal mine, we were really pushing AI literacy for adults 2 years ago, and we were working primarily with early adopters. Then we have been trying to encourage AI literacy for young people for about a year and a half now. We didn't think we had to. Honestly, there were other incumbents that had done this much longer than us that we thought had that nailed. And we just see that not being the case. And so we have changed our mission to be an AI literacy for 1 million educators and students as of September. And I will say that we're starting to convince organizations to be really intentional about student AI literacy. So that's we have a prompt-a-thon next week with students. We've had students and teachers work together. We have student-facing courses going. And in fact, this will be our first announcement, but we have a free student course similar to our teacher course launching in October. It'll be 4 hours with a certificate. It is C framework aligned. It is about like they actually build their own code of ethics around it, but they also think about their own learning gaps. They think about creativity. They think about studying. They think about all of these like really important applications with this really strong lens towards don't replace, augment, assist, collaborate. And so what I think is interesting though is that there are a couple of big barriers to getting AI literacy for students really going. One is that there's this need to get teachers going first. And so if you teacher PD days really being like, very so like precious and hard to get means that can be pushed back. Second thing is there's this really negative like misconception that because kids are using AI, they know how to use it. So the similar thing of like digital literacy, that digital native equals digital literacy. And y'all, that is just not true. We would not be so pissed at our young people in classrooms. I'm sorry, I'm using the strong language, but if students are using AI well and correctly, we would never know, But what they're doing is they're using it in the worst possible way that is frustrating on so many levels. It shows a complete lack of understanding of the technology, of critical evaluation, of understanding how to use the tools. And so we're not frustrated with students using AI. We're frustrated with students using AI badly. And so I think that those two barriers are significant, which is why, similarly to our free course being like kind of this huge thing 2 years ago. In fact, I think we were one of the first free educator courses on AI literacy at all after ChatGPT, is that we're hoping that by leading from that place of like, students need this and we need to give them the space to understand it, that others will come around and there'll be more consensus, and that students can advocate, like if they find this, they can advocate for them, like AI literacy themselves. And so, but I do think that what the last thing I'll say is classroom use is that the crazy thing about this is that things like School AI and Magic School, which have chatbots for students, are primarily used in elementary school. And the place in which there is the least amount of AI literacy is elementary school. So students are actively using Gen AI tools without AI literacy as young as second to kindergarten.
Yeah, and those conversations are actually really interesting too, because I think as you move further along the grade levels and you have where this becomes more of a factor in student use, then some of those things, those ethical concerns that we talked about earlier, start to creep in more and more depending on where that's falling, on the grade continuum. So,
yeah, I will say, I think that my new soapbox is student AI literacy. My new Amanda screaming into the void and hoping that people listen. but we're really hopeful for the course. I think actually, honestly, with you two, it's a little more technical because we can go more technical with students because it's more like we have a little bit more time. I think you guys would dig it. It's actually, we're talking about prompt injections. We're like, it's really like, I don't know. I'm really like it's not easy to be a team of like 8 people and be like, we're going to create this huge free course with everything else we're doing. But it's so energizing to like have fun with this and like new prompts for the library. And it's like deeply like ethical and thoughtful. I don't know. I'm excited about it.
So, what would, you mentioned like the least amount of AI literacy being given towards elementary students. So let's just say like 3rd, 4th grade, what do you think an effective AI literacy integration would be into one of those classroom spaces?
I think the most important thing is to start to have young people recognize that like how these bots work and don't work, that they are not real, that they are designed to feel real. A 3rd and 4th grader, when talking to Alexa, can understand the limitations, and you have on-ramps, right? That a lot of young people using these tools without knowing it for a long time. I mean, Snapchat is being used by 10-year-olds, and they have an AI system since 2.5 years ago. So I think that for us, it's still the same. I kind of, it's not like you don't go deeply into like ethics, but you can go into watch it not label a map correctly. I don't know if you saw our LinkedIn post recently, but you guys, we did it live when we were together. Like, it's wild. It's so bad, y'all. Yesterday, it gave me, we asked ChatGPT to label a map as an example of hallucination or accuracy. And yesterday we did it, and it gave me like a plot again. And then it put the plot into a kind of sorta state line map. And when I asked it to rate its output, it said 8 out of 10. And I'm like, this isn't even a map. And it's like, oh, JK. Yeah, you're right. But doing that with a 4th grader, you think they're going to go and trust this moving forward? Absolutely not. Showing them if something can create, rewrite, or design, that it's going to be generative AI, and you have to use it differently than other systems. 3rd or 4th grade. Talking about, are you over relying? Are you going to ChatGPT or whatever about your own personal life instead of your friend or me? Why? Is it and is it because it's safe? Does it feel safer? Is it because it's more positive? Is it more less judgmental? But why? But if you know that these tools are not, there's nothing on the other side, and in fact, it can actually tell you things that are harmful. How do we need to change our behavior? A 3rd or 4th grader can understand that. Then in 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th, 11th and 12th, you just spiral that curriculum, you spiral that knowledge, and you reinforce. You go deeper into the technology and how to use it. You start to apply it. You start to gradually release the responsibility. But 3rd and 4th graders, why wouldn't we do that? First of all, I'm going to just give you one more example. You guys know I love, this is what happens when you literally do the work. I have 9,000 anecdotes, guys. In fact, we could do an entire 3 hours with Amanda telling you anecdotes. But we do our same flagship with young people as adults. And so we do bias and image generation. And we do a CEO, which is always kind of a nice one because it's funny, and because it's so bad, guys, it's so bad. You've seen it. But what we did is we showed them Canva, and we were at a guideline development in Illinois, and it was amazing. There were 5 8th graders. And I come over when the 8th graders, when we were exploring Canva, was trying her best to create an unsexist CEO picture with Canva. And what she did is it actually created an image of a white CEO in the middle of 2 adoring women staring at him like this. And on the top, it says, super unsexist CEO. Literally written out. And first of all, she did this on her own. She was not asked to do this. But talk about that seminal piece of learning in that moment. First of all, about bias, but about control. We don't control image generators right now the same way we control large language model outputs like ChatGPT. But I think that doesn't, an 8th grader did this on her own. You could do that in 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade. And you know what? The best thing about AI literacy today is that it's interesting and weird and funny. It won't be the same way in 5 years. And it's definitely more engaging than comparing 2 websites or looking for sources.
Yeah, I think without a doubt. And I've done very similar ones. In fact, you kind of reminded me of one that I created this image to illustrate kind of somewhat that point. But, give me a room full of teachers going through a professional development training. And so invariably, all of I would say 90% of the teachers that they showed in there, of maybe 25 or so, they were white women, probably around 50, and were wearing glasses. And that, so I mean, and
At least there are women in it.
To say, think of the data that this is being trained on. Where are they getting that information about what a teacher looks like? And, Flickr, whether it's Flickr images or they're getting threads from Reddit or wherever. But like, and then I got to the point where I had to prompt this about 5 different times to get the results that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And so I think that also could be another image or another activity with that same group of 3rd, 4th, 5th graders that you're talking about, where they could be designed to create a diverse group,
Well, the thing is, a family body type, body image. If you do a family on a picnic, like we did in the course, it's only watermelon and like fruit. It's only healthy snacks, and everyone is really thin, and it's mostly like, not to go too deep into this, but like there's so many deeper like biases, and the thing is that why not dig into the places of uneasiness, meaning like the things that don't work? Because how much when have we ever taught young people or ourselves to be critical users of technology? Mm-hmm. We have been the frogs in the pot of boiling water, where it's free, it's available, it's designed to be addictive, whether it's social media, devices, etc. And we have, over time, given more, like, who even reads terms of service anymore, right? Like, or ever. That, why not disrupt the system and say, hey, like, tech is tech. It wants to, you know what the goal of tech is? For you to buy it. And, let's be critical users. And you know what? I'm going to make a conscious decision to use this in a way that's meaningful to me, but I'm going to do it in a safe and responsible way. And you know what? Maybe sometimes I don't make 100 images, even though my friend did, because you know what? That could be environmentally negative. Not nearly as environmentally negative as building a new model, but you can make those decisions. And I think that's where that's where the learning happens, at points of friction, not at points of ease. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we have points of friction, that's the things kids remember forever.
Okay. So moving forward, Amanda, the one thing that we are curious about is how can, as this is all shifting and going on, what would be your recommendation for how teachers can stay grounded in what their responsibility, or the main goal of educating students is, as all this is shifting around them? What would be your recommendation during all this?
I think the first thing is it's incredibly important to build your own AI literacy. I mean, I just think that AI literacy is a foundation. Until you won't even know the right questions to ask until you understand what this is or isn't. And I think that is this is something that is incredibly important. And that could be something that is like our free course. It could be coming to one of your sessions. It could be coming to one of our webinars, or there are courses on Google, and Claude has, Anthropic has some. Like, there's a lot of really good opportunities. But I think that like AI literacy as your foundation. But I'm gonna say this is the best time to partner with each other and young people. And so that doesn't mean go to young people and say, teach me how to do this, but we're going to learn together. Because again, they're probably going to be showing you the worst possible version of this, outside of, the same amount of like sophisticated users as adults. So like the last thing I'm going to say, then, this is something that I cannot underscore enough: transparency and modeling of ethical, safe, and effective behaviors is the most important thing we need to do today. If you feel like it's cheating yourself, you should interrogate, is that because it's something maybe you should have done, or it's so important, meaning like this is something that's a core part of teaching that I shouldn't have offloaded? Or is it because of the negative rhetoric, because you're not talking about it? And if it's a former, maybe the same way students have to think about what is actually the most important use of this is an important conversation for yourself. But if it's a latter, which is more common, then you know what's the best way to do this? Talk to your administration about setting clear guidelines, start to be transparent, show people what you do, show kids what you do. If you're using it to build instructional material where kids won't just turn off completely because they're like, oh, they use AI. Like, hey guys, we're gonna use Canva AI right now to create an interactive element because we're struggling. I'm gonna show you how to do it. We're gonna vibe code. I'm gonna give it feedback. You know what? I didn't do a great job of giving it specificity, so it's not perfect, but now it's good, and we're gonna go do it. And then we're gonna reflect on, did this help? If not, okay, then maybe we should have done something differently, or maybe I should have, like, could have there been a human intervention that was better? But think about how rich and amazing that is and how much learning can happen instead of, hey, everybody, this isn't working, so I'm going to keep talking for 30 minutes, or I'm going to have you do a worksheet, or, you know, like what we do when things go wrong, right? How are we overcompensating and or redirecting? So I think that those types of activities and that transparency and that modeling of meaningful, effective, and safe use is such a gift right now. And it's a way to create spaces in which we're not hiding use. And I think that that's really, really important. Because if a kid comes to you and says, hey, Jeremy, I do not have a tutor at home, and I am struggling with this concept, and I know you're not available at 2:00 in the morning when I'm doing work. What should I do? Can I use AI? Okay, so Jeremy says, yes, but what I want you to do is I want you to go to Google's study mode, because I'm a little bit more confident. It's not going to be perfect, but I think it can help you here. And I want you to then come to me the next day, and we're going to interrogate how it went. And you're going to use these best practices. Instead of a kid either avoiding that AI use because of the fear of associating with cheating, or using it in a way that can potentially harm their learning because they're just using ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is telling them the completely wrong answer because it's not fit for purpose for the thing they need.
And I just think, what if it could also be based upon the content that you've already given to kids that is coming from your own voice, using something like NotebookLM.
NotebookLM, a gem. Yeah, absolutely.
Or if you're fortunate enough to have a paid version of Conmigo, any of those things would be great.
Because the thing is, these kids are doing it with Quizlet already, but they're using their own notes that probably have deficiencies in them. Mm-hmm. But if I did it where I use NotebookLM and I created a beautiful notebook with all, and if you don't know what NotebookLM does, it essentially can create this what they call a walled garden, where instead of the Gemini model going out into the world and potentially pulling in things that weren't very meaningful or correct, instead you're able to put the chapter, if it's not copyrighted, but the chapter of the book, mm-hmm. your notes and your slide decks, and then build a frame where students can ask questions directly, get a study guide, flashcards, timelines, briefings. Then you're controlling the environment, and it takes 10 minutes.
And you're limiting the possibility of hallucination because it's really based upon just your stuff.
Nothing eliminates the possibility.
Nothing eliminates entirely, right? But
it makes it less. But it also gives you an opportunity to double check that the work in a more direct manner, going directly to the source mm-hmm. that you've given. It's still, I will say, if anybody's using NotebookLM, first of all, no generative AI systems do not hallucinate or make mistakes. But I will say that if you're using audio overviews, that is a place that will have the highest hallucination rate in NotebookLM.
Good point.
So just I hate to be like that person, but mm-hmm. I am that person. You guys know. But I do think that is something, even the kids know. What if they find a hallucination? Wonderful. That's why you always double check.
Before we get into our lightning round, that's our fun questions for the most part. Real quick, is there anything you want to promote or highlight that you have coming up, or that viewers or listeners should know?
Well, we've got some webinars coming up, which will be fun. We've got a kind of a deeper prompting one around reasoning models and deep research. That's going to be internal. We're going to do one on student well-being with the Rhythm Project. We're going to do one with Anna Mills on using AI for feedback, not giving, it's not grading. Just want to underline that. We are also, new cohorts of our courses are out. We have some starting next week in September, but also November and January. It's free student course coming out in October. Also a futurist piece that we've convened and done about like what the future could be with AI in education. So lots of good stuff. Also new updates to our prompt library. So I'd say like, and also hopefully if we can get our stuff together, an updated website where it's easier to find all the resources we have. So we're hoping that that's before the end of the year as well.
Great. And we'll be sure to include some of the links and things for that in our descriptions. And but we're going to jump into our lightning round before you go. Jeremy, you want to kick it off?
All right. So we're just kind of some random questions. They can just be, they might be AI related. They might not. It might be a mix of everything here. Okay.
Okay.
And just short blurb answers.
Okay. I'm ready.
What book are you currently reading, or what's a book that's kind of shaping your thinking recently?
I read mostly fiction. So I'm going to go with, I'm reading the new, it's a book about vampires. And then of course I can't remember the name of the book, but it was by the person that wrote Addie LaRue. It's pretty good. I'm also rereading Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison.
All
By
right,
the way, it's on my shelf. That's why I pointed, not just being
okay,
weird.
yeah, next to the
That's just
Tetris
random
stuff.
pointings.
What's the most overrated AI fear you hear from educators?
That will take my jobs.
Will AI
Right.
literacy eventually be a required course in schools, or a required content?
I hope so.
How soon?
Not soon. I mean, I would say PISA's test is 2029. I think we have a long way to go. I think that things like California pushing on AI literacy as a graduation requirement can help, but we have a path.
What's favorite way to recharge after a long day of workshops or speaking engagements or talking to podcast hosts?
I live in New York City. So one of my favorite things to do is put on my headphones with music and walk. And I love New York, walking in New York City. It's a great, it's my favorite thing to do.
I think you kind of answered what the next question was going to be, but what's your favorite deli item in New York?
My favorite deli item, I'm very bread motivated. So like bakeries, so we got to go bagel, a good New York bagel. I know we don't have those in Minnesota, but you can come out and hang out with me.
Sounds good. All right. And then this is the last question. So if everything's shut down, the grid goes down, you're completely offline for a week, what would you do? Spot to go, anything like that? What would you do in that scenario?
I would go hang out with my 92-year-old grandmother, who is very grumpy, but I love her so much. And we just hang out, and I would read, and I would spend time with her. I would exercise, and that's what I would do.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, Amanda, for your time. We really appreciate it. And make sure that if you're listening or watching, go check out AI for Education. We'll have the links and ways to connect with Amanda below. So thanks, everybody. And thanks again, Amanda.
Thank you.